Good afternoon and welcome from me, Andrew Merchant and Agence Immobilier. So following my last video, which was a guide for the sellers, I decided as we're now into December, Christmas is looming, it's a little bit quiet, which is normal for December. Everyone's getting into Christmas mode. I would spend a little bit of time and produce a video guide for buyers. So I'm sure there's many of you out there that are just starting your adventure to start looking for a property in France, whether it be a holiday home or a permanent residence. And I'm sure there's also many of you that are actively looking for a property in France. One of the most important things about looking for properties in France is to remember how big this country is. For example, from the north coast down to the south coast could take you anything up to 7 or 8 hours to drive. So the country is a vast country. So it's important to select a department, a region, an area, maybe even a couple of regions that you think will be suitable for what you want. Many of you have already probably been on holiday, found areas in France that you really like, and those will be your research areas. Once you've actually nailed it down and you've thought, okay, these are the departments I want, these are the regions I want, then start researching properties. These can be found on social media, on agency websites direct, and there's many property portals out there also that have hundreds and hundreds of properties available. It allows you to put in your budget and a small criteria, and then it will bring properties in that might be suitable for you. You can also contact agents like myself and have a chat over the phone or by video call and give us information of exactly what your wish list is, what you're looking for, and how much you've got to spend. We can then also propose properties to you that are just coming on the market before they even go on a website, which is also a real good benefit. So once you've found the properties you want to see, it's then a case of making a visiting trip. So I would recommend over a period of 4 days, for example, you don't visit any more than 3 to 4 properties a day. And over 3 or 4 days, that's going to give you anything from 12 to 16 properties, which is plenty of properties to view and get a good idea and a good feel for the area, and if the properties in that area are suitable for your requirements. During that period, during the visits, take some notes, and then I'm sure after 2 or 3 days, you're going to start creating what we call a shortlist. The shortlist will contain maybe 2, maybe 3 properties. You can then contact the agent back and say, this property is now on our shortlist. Can we arrange to go back and do a second viewing on it? The second viewing is really, really important because it needs to be able to give you the same feel as that first time you visited the property. So I would suggest spending plenty of time at the property, 1, 2, maybe even 3 hours at the property, just wandering around it, taking in each room, sit down in the lounge, sit down in the dining room, taking the ambience of the property to really see if that property works for what you want. So if you get to the point and you've got your shortlist and you've got to that one property and you've thought, okay, this is the property I want, this is really the one, it's then time to start thinking about making an offer. So we've all seen the TV programs from going back to 2005, 2006, where come to France, come to Spain, come to Portugal, make an offer 50% less the asking price, they'll accept it. Unfortunately, that doesn't actually work anymore. Most properties in France are correctly priced. And yes, of course, there's flexibility to make an offer. However, the flexibility to make an offer should be based on what you've seen at the property, justification of the offer. For example, it might have a non-conforming septic tank. It might have a leak in the roof. It might have old wiring. So when thinking about making the offer on the property, think about how you're justifying that offer as well, so that when we as agents can go to the vendors and say, our client has made an offer, they've based their offer on the justification of these reasons. It's a lot better way of going back and just saying, my client's offered X amount. If the vendor is then happy with the offer, you're happy with the offer, we can then proceed to the next stage. The next stage being the proposal of purchase. So I would advise once the offer, verbal offer, has been accepted by the vendor, I would then advise sending an email to your estate agent just confirming that offer in writing. Once that's in writing, we can then do what we call a proposition of purchase. This is a document that it's not legally binding. However, it allows us to take the property off the market and allows us to prepare all the documents required for a sale contract. Normally, we would allow between 3 and 5 weeks with this proposal. That gives us plenty of time to get everything together, either make an appointment at a notaire, or in my case, to draw up the sale contract. It would then also block any other visits to the property and not allow anyone else to go in and take the property from under your feet. What we would then do is the sale contract. So the sale contract is really important. For me, I do it. It's in English and in French. It's good that it's in English because it gives you a lot better understanding of the whole contract. It's also a legal obligation at the point of issue of the contract to give you a full copy of all the diagnostics. So the diagnostics for the property include the energy efficiency, the audit, if the audit's required, electric, gas, asbestos, lead, and a report for the drainage, whether that be on mains drainage or on septic tank. We also have what's called an ERP, which is an attack the risk and pollution. This is just a general information sheet which tells you about the general area where the house is, and it tells you, for example, there's pollution in the area, if there's any landslips in the area, if it's in a flood zone. It gives you all what we call the geo risk information that you need to be made aware of before buying that property. So the obligation from the notaire or from us is to make sure that all information is being provided to you in accordance with the law for the sale contract. For me, I would send you out the sale contract and the annex by electronic signature. And also, if you're doing it in front of the notaire, it can either be done by meeting, or it can be done electronically through the notaire through power of attorney. There's various options of doing it, so you don't necessarily have to be here to sign the compromis de vente. Once the compromis de vente is signed by all parties, we then go into what we call the 10-day cooling off period. So you as a buyer have 10 days to reflect on the decision you've made for buying the property. And at the end of that 10 days, the contract is then live and valid. Other than a clause suspensive, which I will talk to you about next, you have no reason to withdraw from that contract. And if you do withdraw from that contract, you will be liable to a 10% deposit. So with a clause suspensive, there is various reasons why a clause suspensive could be in place. It could be for the reason you are selling your house in the UK, and without selling the property in the UK, you are unable to finance the purchase of the property in France. Same again in France. If you're selling the property in France, you need that finance to buy the property in France. This is a clause suspensive that is put in place to protect you so that you are not liable for financial liabilities should you have to withdraw from the sale. So in order to do this, whether the property be in France, Spain, England, wherever, we would need the full address of the property that is under offer or under contract. We would need confirmation from your solicitor or from the estate agent confirming the property is under contract, with the amount of how much it's being sold for and an estimated date of completion. This would then be entered into the contract as the clause suspensive that if that property doesn't sell and it doesn't complete, you do have the right to withdraw from the contract without any financial penalty. So that gives you an idea of what a clause suspensive is. There's various other clause suspensives that can be put in place, which can be adapted to personal needs. So the 10-day cooling off period is gone. You would then be liable to pay the 10% deposit. There's quite a lot of agents out there that are licensed to hold client funds. However, I would recommend that the 10% deposit is sent directly to the notaire and it's held in the notaire's escrow account. Once the 10% deposit and the file has been given to the notaire, or in some cases it will be with the notaire because the compromis was signed at the notaire, he will then start the procedures of things like searches and the various proceedings that have to take place by the notaire to be able to pass that file. So we have what's called the SAFER. The SAFER is the agricultural body of France, and they have a right to preempt a property before you purchase it. This has become a little bit silly over the years because it used to be set on, I think it was 3,000 square meters or above on land. However, with the new system with the PLU, which is gives you a mapping system of various regions telling you what the zones are, whether they're agricultural zones or whether they're natural zones or building zones, these SAFER now are actually have to be notified, even if it's a small village house on the edge of a village with a garden of 500 square meters. If it's on the agricultural zoning, it needs to be notified to the SAFER. Not that a farmer is going to want to buy a garden of 500 square meters, but it still has to happen. So this goes two ways. It normally is a 2-month notification from the date the notaire notifies the SAFER. However, if you're pushed to buy your new property and also the vendors would like to get sold as soon as possible, this can be speeded up a little bit by paying, depending on the price of the property, anything from 120 to 520 euros to speed that notification period up to 1 month. So the average time for a sale in France from the time of signing to the end could be anything from 9 weeks to 14 weeks. And it can be speeded up or slowed down as we need to. But the SAFER is the most important notification because that does have time limits on it, either 2 months or pay to bring it down to 1 month. The other body that has a right to preempt a property before you, and this isn't the case for all communes, is the commune, so the mayor. So the mayor has to have notification that the property is being sold, and in a lot of cases, the local commune do have the right to buy that property before you. I must admit, in 20 years, I've never had a property bought by the commune. I have had one that's been bought by the SAFER, but not by the commune. So this is nothing really to fear about. It is just a legal obligation. If, for example, the SAFER were to preempt the property and the mayor was to preempt the property, the contract is then cancelled and your deposit is fully repaid. This is no financial liability to you at all. So once the notaire has gone through that procedure, he's also responsible for checking there is no fiscal debts on the property, i.e. taxes, and that there is no outstanding mortgage or loans on the property. This is normally done very last minute so that it's very, very current, and normally the dates are within 2 to 3 weeks maximum within the final signing date of the property to show there is no fiscal debts on the property. That basically means that no one in authority has got any right to come to the property after you purchased it and insist that you pay a debt. Once all the checks and the searches have been carried out by the notaire and they've all been passed through, we will then be in a position to offer you what is called a final signing date. Normally we'd be able to give you at least 4 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice of a date for a final signing, but this isn't fixed in stone. If, for example, you couldn't make one date, we can rearrange and make another date very close by. It just can't be extended and extended and extended all the time. So that would be notified to you by your agent, by email or by telephone. Once we have a date fixed in place, then is the time you would need to look at transferring the rest of the funds to the notaire. And we recommend that that's done at least 7 days in advance of the final signing. Reason being, money coming from the UK in particular can take up to 72 hours to arrive from the UK to France. And we know many people that have left this to the last minute. We've got to the final signing date. Well, we transferred the money 3 days ago, but it hasn't arrived at the notaire's. Unless the money is in the notaire's account, we cannot complete that final signing. It is compulsory that the money is in the account. By just showing proof that the transfer has been done will not suffice, and the signing will be cancelled or postponed until the money has arrived. So really important, make sure you allow at least 7 days. As a buyer, you have a legal right to visit the property just before the final signing as well. This is something that's highly recommended, and personally, if you're not coming to the final signing, which you don't need to because we can do a power of attorney, this is something your agent should be doing, going and visiting the property before the final signing, doing a video tour with you, or at least a video to show you that the property is in the same condition and presented in exactly the same way it was the day you agreed to buy it. This is a really important note because this is actually a point on the compris de vente that the property is presented in exactly the same manner it was when you agreed to buy it. And unfortunately, so many sellers make the mistake that once the compris is signed, they go off and do whatever they're going to do. They move away from the property, they leave the garden. It comes down in the spring. We come to do the final signing, and the garden looks like a jungle. It's not. This is not acceptable. The garden must be presented in exactly the same way it was when you saw it. So the final visit to the property is really important for that reason. It's also important for us to take the meter readings for the electricity and the water, so that after the final signing, we can help you change over the accounts for the water and electric. Just on a note of the services, for example, with internet in France, you would need to create a new account. When someone moves out of a property in France, they do have to return the internet box to the supplier, and you cannot take over that existing contract. You will need to create a new account. However, this can be done 2-3 weeks before you move to France or buy the property in France. The company, for example, Orange, can be notified that the final signing date is on such and such a date. They will then send a internet box to a local store for you to pick up. And then on the day of completion, you can plug it in and activate that box. So it's not a problem to get internet. You just can't take the existing contract. So once you're happy with the property, you've done the visit, everything's as it should be, we would then go off to the notaires to the final signing. As I say, you don't need to be present. We can do this by power of attorney. However, I do like clients coming to final signings in France because it is a really, really good experience. It's something you wouldn't experience in the UK, as we all sit around the table and the whole contract, the whole sale gets discussed in front of everybody. Whereas in the UK, it's a telephone call, transfer of funds, own a new property. But this is a really nice experience to go and experience yourself. But as I say, you don't have to be here. You can do it by power of attorney, and your agent would arrange that to be done. So during the signing, it's basically just a reading of the compris de vente again, unless there's anything that's been a mistake's been made, i.e. dates of birth, address, which can be changed at the time. Really important note as well is to talk about a clause tontine. A clause tontine is ideal if you are in a second marriage and you have children on both sides. A clause tontine can be put in place on the day of the final signing. This makes sure that the remaining partner, after a partner has died, goes to the remaining partner and it doesn't go to the other children. It just gives you the remaining partner 100%. However, clause tontine I will present on another video, and various options for buying a property on the legal side of it, because there's a lot more in-depth detail I can go into, and this will just take too long on this video. So that was just really a brief idea of what a tontine is. But once again, your agent or your notaire should be discussing this with you before you sign an acte final. So once the act has been signed, you are the owner of the property on that day. You'll get given the keys on that day. And when you leave the notaire's, the property is yours to go and enjoy. So there you go. There's a basic guide of how to buy a property in France and the procedures to follow. Yes, there is a lot more detail involved as well, which is too much to discuss on a video. However, if you want any more information about how to buy a property, you can contact me by messenger, you can email me, you can phone me and I'll do a video call with you. If you're looking for properties, go to our website, www.agencenewson.com, and also just watch our social media pages. All our agent commercials have social media, the agency has social media, and we look forward to seeing you soon and meeting you and taking you to present some properties. Have a lovely time. Goodbye.